back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Rebecca Hay is with me today. Rebecca is the CEO of Rebecca Hay Designs. She's an interior designer located in Canada. She's also a podcast host herself. She's an international speaker and a business coach to other interior designers. Rebecca has honed her business process the way many of us have, through trial and error, proving the point experience can often be the best teacher of all. And now she is sharing that hard-earned experience. And you know how much I love someone who pays it forward by teaching you and me the lessons that they've already learned. Now, before we meet Rebecca, I want to remind you about the Power Talk Friday tour coming up in High Point this October 21st, 2022. Power Talk Friday tours are one day, all day, 8:30 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, right? We are always a small group with a maximum of 20 attendees. It is a day filled with presentations, roundtable discussions, connecting with new colleagues, business building, and mind-blowing idea-generating conversations, culminating with a celebration dinner complete with the aha moments of the day. Now, this Power Talk Friday, I'm happy to announce one of our new sponsors is Brad Kleinert, the Director of Financial Design at High Point Financial Design. Brad was on the show way back at episode 489, and check out the title of that show. It was called Financial Planning for Abundant Living. Brad and his team are not your average garden variety financial planners. No, their mission is abundance for everyone, especially their clients. They believe it is their responsibility as financial designers to help you improve your life, make better choices concerning your money, and positively impact your financial wellness. This is their one extraordinary and obsessive focus. So if you join me, the Vin Man, and Eileen Hahn at High Point this October, you will also have the opportunity at our celebration dinner to meet Brad. So go to powertalkfriday.com to learn more about the event. And in the meantime, I encourage you to go back and listen to Brad's episode. I'm 100% certain, like me, you will find him to be a genuinely kind soul who lives the mission of his company. Okay, now let's meet Rebecca Hay. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. I'm very excited to be here.
Rebecca, I am looking forward to this conversation because, I feel like a broken record lately. I think you guys in my audience who are interested in being on the podcast have truly learned my love language, because more and more I open up an email and it's a had me at hello moment. And so your had me at hello moment was why leveraging the power of process allows entrepreneurs to upscale their business. I'm like, yep, except pitch. I'm like, yep, that's a yes. I don't have to read anymore. I read the rest, but I'm like, we're there.
Well, LuAnn, you definitely, you've influenced me for so many years that process has just become so ingrained in my subconscious, I think. You've had some influence over me from your podcast.
Wow. So you are, you obviously are a listener of the podcast.
Absolutely. You were the very first podcast I didn't even know podcasts existed. Oh. And then I found your podcast. It was the first one I ever listened to.
That's interesting.
I obsessed over it.
And how did you find it, Rebecca? Did someone tell you, or did you decide, with not having listened to any podcast, did you do a search in the podcast album, libraries, or did someone mention it to you?
LuAnn, that was a long time ago. I don't remember. I have no clue.
Well, a good salesman always finds out where their clients come from.
You're very good, very clever. I see what you're doing.
No, I mean, look, I'm just happy you found it.
Oh my goodness,
So the thing
absolutely.
is that, all right, so let's just say that. So you listen to the show and and you've learned it from your peers and your colleagues and from the experts that we've had on, that process is important. Was it something that was important to you already, Rebecca, and it just like cemented it for you, or it clarified it for you, or it just was like more of it is good?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's a great question. I think that what happened was when I started in the design business, I worked for another designer and I was kind of his right hand and did sort of everything. And it felt super chaotic and it was very stressful. And I remember thinking at the time, I was in my late 20s at the time working for him, thinking there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know what that looked like. I had no resources back then. Podcasts, I don't know if they existed. If they did, it wasn't really a thing. Facebook, like people weren't connecting online the way they are today.
Mm.
And so I just remember having this feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel so much anxiety, but it wasn't my business. And so, I kept doing the best I could to try to organize. I'd make spreadsheets, all the little things. And then I think, like to your point, over the years, I think it was just hearing it talked about more and more through your podcast, through other colleagues, through business coaches, and thinking, okay, yeah, this sounds like something that could be useful. But to be honest with you, I never really believed that I was going to be one of those designers who could properly follow process and have systems in their business. It felt too structured, and it also kind of felt a little too advanced, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So get me up to speed first, though. How many years did you end up working for the other firm before you started your own firm?
So I worked for that firm for almost 5 years, and then I had a baby. So it was kind of my excuse to make a transition. I was ready. And then for a couple of years, I started my business and I worked behind the scenes in television. I designed for some TV shows, which was an interesting insight because they had a process. I'm not saying it's the best process, but it was a glimpse. And at least it was interesting to me how in TV land, we had to really design everything up front, which I'd never done before. When I worked for the previous firm, we'd be running around, I'd grab some fabrics, we take them to the client, we kind of throw them on the floor, say, what do you think about this? Well, yeah, but if we did this for the sofa, then this would be a really great pillow. And then that would be the drapery. Oh, but that would also be a really good accent chair. And so we would always do our design process collaboratively. I'm using air quotes.
In real time,
which takes longer, as you know. It takes a lot more time to get to the same result, and also probably doesn't instill the best confidence in your client sometimes because they want you to tell them what to do.
Right.
I've learned. I didn't know that back then.
Right.
So TV was, oh, this is really structured, and so it was a glimpse into, oh, I see what process could potentially start out as.
Okay. So you have this, from a process standpoint, a negative experience with the first firm. Maybe I'm sure there were other experiences that were positive by being there. And then you see a little bit of it through the TV production design, but you said that you still felt like it was out of reach for you as a designer in your business, and you ended with it almost felt a little too advanced. Talk to us. What were your feelings on that at that time? Why was that? Did it just feel too big to actually be the one to create the process?
Yeah, I think because I was a solo. It was just little old me running my business out of a spare bedroom in my house. I had no business training. I went to school for political science.
Okay. Great training.
Great training. And then of course I went to design school, but as we all know, that doesn't
they're not teaching
teach
that
you.
there. No, they're teaching you how to design.
Exactly.
Not how to run the business part of it. Right.
They don't teach you any of that. At least they certainly didn't when I went to school. And so when I was running my business and wanting a process, and I'm sure many of your listeners can relate, it's overwhelming. Like you have so much to do. You wear a million hats. You're running around. You are doing the invoicing. You're trying to maybe grow your team. You're dealing with the clients. You're doing the design. You're trying to create some structure. But for the longest time, I couldn't find the time or make the time, I guess, to just sit down and work on my business. And your podcast, honestly, LuAnn, was very helpful in reminding me of all the things that I knew I needed to do. But it did take a lot of exposure till I really finally got the picture. And I had what I call the lemon job, which many of us has probably had one of these, where literally everything went wrong. And it was a tipping point for me running my business, because I just felt like anxiety on a daily basis. Like even just talking about it right now, I'm feeling that anxiety in my chest where, what have I forgotten? Well, I got to make a list. What's next? What do I have to do? Check my email. I would be texting with clients at 11 o'clock at night. It was not healthy.
It's funny because you know that Sarah Lynn Brennan is my poster child for process, right?
Yep.
And she had the same sort of lemon job moment. It was similar. She had been working on it and thinking she was working on it and different things. And I remember her calling me and just saying, I don't understand. Why do I always feel like it starts out good and that at some point it just falls apart and I don't feel like I'm in control of the project anymore, blah, 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 blah. And she had that same come to Jesus moment, like there has to be a different way. And I remember, just doing the tough love. And I'm like, you're skirting around creating your process. You're playing at it. Sit down and do it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, that's what I was doing was I thought I had a process. So this is what I thought was interesting. I had, joined Business of Design. I was listening to your podcast obsessively and trying to create a process. And I thought I had it with this lemon job. But this was like a high-end client. I thought, yes, this is my ticket. I'm going to be working with all these high-end houses. It's going to be amazing. And at the end of the job, I went to take the client a little thank you gift. And when you know in your heart that they're probably not really happy and you feel a little bit icky inside. I don't know.
Your inner voice, your inside voice is talking to you. Like,
yes. I knew that I hadn't really delivered on what they wanted. The place looked amazing, but it was a very stressful however many months. And we sat down, I took them the bottle of champagne, a little card to say thank you. And they said, Rebecca, we want to share some information with you because we think it'll be helpful for you in your business. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sweating. And I still can't, by the way, drive by their neighborhood without feeling icky and weird. It's terrible. But they said, we loved working with you. You're a lovely girl. We think you do beautiful work. But honestly, the process of working with you was chaotic. And it was unorganized, and we were over budget, which was all very true. And at the time, I, of course, pointed my finger at them, not to their faces, but to my husband. I'm like, they just don't understand the design process. Like, this is how it goes. And I realized over a little bit of thinking and reflecting that maybe it wasn't them. It was me.
You're so smart.
Took some time though. I had to get through that anger phase.
It's true. Well, you've listened to the show, as you said, and you know what I always say. You have to, no matter what the situation is, you have to wind it back to where you could have changed something to change the outcome. And in that process, that doesn't mean that that process in my mind, when I have a mistake, right? That's what I always do. When I make a mistake, when anybody that works for me makes a mistake, my kids, when they make a mistake, I just say, okay, it hurts. It's a stomach punch. It feels icky. Like you said, just looking at their house just brings up, like those stomach punch pains, right? But if you don't take the time to wind it back and see where you played the part in it, and I said sometimes it's the step before, sometimes it's 5 steps before, but once you identify that, there comes the lesson, right? There comes the clarity. It's sort of like, if the tile is all backwards, right? Maybe it's a tile that, it's a chevron. It could have been pointing up. It could have been pointing down. It could have been pointing left. It could have been pointing right. But, maybe you specifically wanted it one direction. You probably did want it in a specific direction. My goodness, you're designing, right? But when you walk in and the tile guy hasn't put it that way, and you want to stand there and say, because I'm telling you, it's happened with us with window treatments, lack of information and then getting on the job and being like, that's not what I wanted. Well, were you going to send a smoke signal so I knew what you wanted? Like, I don't get it, right? And so in that moment, it can be, oh my goodness, the tile guy should have called. I get that. That's 100% true. If I don't know, if I'm doing something for you that's so permanent like tile, and it's a chevron and you haven't told me up, down, or sideways, I'm not. I'm a smart person. I'm not going to install it until I reach you, even if I can't install it that day as contracted because I can't reach you. But the fact is, there are people that will go throw that tile down. And you can say first thing to wind back is that person should have called me. But wind it back further. What would have happened if I had delivered a design plan to the tile guy, not just my client? What would have happened if I actually showed up on site before the tile started going? Like, there's multiple ways you could have changed the outcome, right? And then that's how you start to build in your process, right, Rebecca?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're going through a situation right now, similar, not tile, it's a range hood, and the wrong specs were sent. And so that didn't fit, and they tried to make it work on site. And now there's finger pointing. And I sat down yesterday, LuAnn, I was like, we sent the wrong specs. This is our fault. We did not verify. It was forwarded from from the company that sold us the appliances, but it sucks to reflect on that. But every time you make a mistake like that, you do learn, hopefully, and that's when you update and put it into your documentation, into your process.
Right. That is the next step. I think I said it 3 times at Window Works yesterday, because we have a system for logging in fabric that we receive from interior designers. And I've got 2 new people working, and I was about to teach them how to do it. And Catherine looks at me and she says, oh, Lou, we do it digitally now. I was like, oh, well, that's exciting. I'm like, okay. And I said, so has it been updated in our SOPs, our standard operating procedure? And she just said, oh, I don't think in writing. And I was like, okay, so who's going, because I got to teach it to them. So I got to know what the new process is, right?
Yeah.
So somebody first has to update it in writing so that we can all do it the same way, right? And so I love that. I love that a lot. And the thing is that, having that conversation with that client, that took a lot of nerve to sit there through that conversation. That's a painful conversation. We've all been in that situation, by the way. I don't think any one of us escapes being self-employed and not having, at some point in our career, somebody look at us and go, have a little seat here. Let's have a chat. And, it does feel yucky, and you do run around and stand on your head and scream and yell after you leave. But if you take the lesson away, and it's funny, I don't know because Susan Brunstrom was on the show way back in the beginning. And so you might have remembered that show, Rebecca. And she's a really lovely lady, high-end luxury designer in the Chicago area. And I always remember her saying that at the end of every project, she proactively invites her client to lunch or dinner, depending on the relationship and what the client's life is like and so forth. And with the actual expressed purpose of, please give me feedback on what it was like working with my firm. And I think that takes a lot of nerve.
That is scary. That is scary. Like, for the longest time, we didn't even send a survey or ask for a Google review, even though the project went well. I think probably because of that one project, I always felt very insecure that maybe my clients actually aren't happy. And I had this feeling of like, let's just move on to the next project.
Right.
And so I didn't end a project well. And so I didn't send people a request for a review because I was so nervous that maybe they didn't want to fill it out because they weren't happy secretly, because maybe it was just me being afraid of confrontation or afraid of hearing it. But actually, once we started to do that, and that's one of the last things we do in our process now, it's helpful. And sometimes the more constructive feedback is the most helpful.
You do learn things when you ask people, what was it like working with us? You have to be braced for the answer. But the truth is that if you never ask those questions, you go on years and years doing the things the same way and not realizing that maybe there are things that aren't as enjoyable for the client. Whereas if you brace yourself and you ask the question, theoretically, how many projects do you think you have to worry about facing a negative? If you're getting if let's say in the first year you have 20 projects and you ask 20 people, if you get 10 negatives, but you enact or change or do something different to mitigate those negatives or eliminate them is what we're going for, right? The second year 20 projects, should you have 10 negatives again, or maybe you have 3? Right. And then by the third year, you should have everybody singing your praises every time. Right. Or the third month or the 6th month. It doesn't matter how long the cycle is. But the idea is by facing the music and letting someone honestly, with hopefully compassion, say what they said to you. Love you. Love the design. But this process was really difficult for us, and here's where and how and why it felt this way to us. When you change that, do you expect to hear that again next time? No, right?
And if you do hear it again, then you didn't do something right.
Right. It's like, okay, that definition of crazy, doing the same thing, expecting different results. Right?
Yes. Well, we had a review a few years ago that was lovely. They're like, we love our kitchen, and it was in a magazine, and the clients were thrilled, but they didn't put it on the Google review. This was in a private survey, thankfully, just for us. And they said, but the project management is better left to the contractor. Which to me, because we do full service right from start to finish. And it was actually the best feedback I got, because we had been struggling with project management and I kind of knew it, but just kept trying to keep going forward. And I share it with designers all the time. I say these reviews are not reviews, but survey results. When you hear constructive feedback, it really helps you to improve your process, understand maybe also your hiring, right? Maybe and right after that, I hired a dedicated project manager, and the next 2 projects were like a song. They were so beautiful. But if I hadn't had that feedback, how long would I have gone? Yeah. Just with things being sort of good, not really great, right? Sometimes it's really good to get that outside as much as it sucks.
Right, exactly. So what's interesting is that you didn't process it and say, okay, let me turn project management over. You said, no. So if I want to maintain project management, I've got to be intentional about how we project manage.
Yeah, I did debate turning it over, because it's, as designers know, that is our process is in 3 phases. And so that third phase is implementation, we call it, but essentially it's project management. And it's sometimes the hardest part, because we have to work with so many third parties, we're overseeing, and I was tempted to turn it over until my operations manager at the time forced me to look at the numbers. And she said, you can't stop doing this part of your process. It's very profitable. And
plus, that's where your design is coming to life, right? Exactly. I mean, if you leave the execution, you can design anything you want. But to that other example, you could design the chevron going a certain way. And if the GC is in charge of the job and there's one little problem, he would easily look at the tile guy, go ahead, do it the other way then. I don't think it matters. Right?
Exactly. Yes,
I mean, that's
100%.
What would happen. You would walk into something that you design and you'd say, this is not what I designed.
Totally. Yeah. And you know what? That's the whole thing. And I know you said earlier, how I got into this really focusing on process. And for me, what it was a bit at a time. Let's be honest. I didn't one day decide to overhaul my business and I'm now following a 7-step process. And this is how we do things. And we send out this and we have checklists and systems and SOPs. And that's not how it happens. It happened very organically and naturally for me. But we started with a framework and then started to improve. And to your point, I love that you just shared that, because, you go in and how are we training? Is it written down? Is it documented in writing, these new processes? And so if you don't do that, and that's what I find, we're like, oh, let's tweak how we do this. Yeah, that's great. But if we don't then go write it down in our Google Doc or inside of our Asana, then the next time a project rolls around, we don't have it documented to follow.
Right.
And so that has been a big learning because the thing about having a process in your business, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly being tweaked a little bit, changed. Your types of clients that you have will change and evolve, but you always need to follow a process. And I love it because now with every single project, we run it the same way. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, LuAnn, because you're like, I learned a lot of this from you in the first place, but it wasn't until I actually did it myself that it really became clear why I needed it. And I can tell you the interesting side effect of implementing a process, if you want to call it that, for me was confidence.
Oh, yeah. I always say that's the number one result. The number two result is more profitability. The number three result is peace of mind. But the number one result of really sticking, establishing and then documenting and sticking to your process is the confidence to do all of it, to actually execute, to charge your value, to just be able to say yes and no to the right and wrong client. That is the number one. I believe it's the number one. That's why it's so powerful to do it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I didn't think I lacked that confidence. I was a little bit insecure when I started in the industry, and, you want to make sure people like your designs. Are you good enough? You need some outside validation as an artist. But then once I felt that, oh, well, this is how we do things, it made my conversations with clients so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked more professional, and I could charge more money, and people said yes. And it's really been the one thing, really, truly, that has been the biggest game changer in my own interior design business.
I have to say, observing hundreds, if not thousands, of designers at this point over these 6.5 years, it is literally the number one observation also, that even in a conversation, like I've had conversations with designers that came to LuAnn Live 2019 when we did it live in New Jersey, and they were newer interior designers, and I can remember the faces and remember the conversations of certain people, and then I run into them at High Point a year, 2 years, now 3 years later, and just the whole demeanor is different. And these are the ones that say to me, oh my goodness, since I was at LuAnn Live, you don't understand. I put this into place. I put that into place. I have a formal hiring process. I have a formal onboarding process. I have a formal this. And it's like they're standing 10 feet taller. Like literally, there is a physical difference in the way you carry yourself when you know that what you're doing it well. And that is priceless. It really is. It takes a lot, to your point. It doesn't. I've had designers who have said to me, I found your podcast before I opened my firm. So I did a lot of the groundwork before I even opened. I literally did build my process, document, I'm sure not everything. Like you said, doing process is a fluid, ever-changing thing. Here's WindowWorks. We're redocumenting a process now, 40 years later, right? But I have had the occasional designer say to me, I was fortunate enough to hear this before I went out and did it any old haphazard way, and they'll take classes at LuAnn University to supply them and back them up with more process and more information. But mostly, Rebecca, it's what you described. It's okay. All right, this month we're tackling the onboarding process where, the other ones are sort of not so hot right now, but we're going to get this one down. And then the next month you do another one because the business is running. What that one designer said to me, it's, running, I'm going 60 miles down the road and trying to build the car as I'm going 60 miles down the road, 60 miles an hour down the road, So, but we're all going down the road at 60 miles an hour. That's the thing. So you're never going to be in a point. Once you open and you're up and running, you're very rarely going to get to a point where you're like, there's time now to think. Let me dig into my process.
Yes.
The pandemic allowed for it a little bit. I did get a lot of emails from people who were saying, what's funny, it was in the beginning, the first 2 or 3 months. It was slow, but then we blew up, right? And it was insanity. But to sit and wait for the moment when it's going to be comfortable, or the moment that you have time to do it, or the moment that it just feels like you can breathe, so now let me go work on the business, it's never going to happen. You missed it. That was before you opened your doors. It's gone. It's never coming back. You know what I mean? Unless you do a pullback. Like you remember Sandra Funk did a complete pullback. So when she had her come to Jesus moment at the Atlanta airport, and I'll put the episode in the show notes in case you guys haven't heard that episode, but her and I were in the Atlanta airport and yada, yada. I'm not going to repeat the story. You'll go hear it. But she, I just looked at her. I said, sweetie, one client fires you in the last year, it's the client. 4 out of 6 fire you in the last year, it's you. I'm sorry,
Right.
I love you very much, but it's
What's
you.
the common denominator?
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so she just took it to heart, and she went back to her team and she said, that's it. No new clients until we figure this out. And so she finished the 2, 3, 4 projects that she had going on. But very few business owners have the, I'm just, like, I'll use the word confidence, but the word I want to use, to do that.
I know the word.
Yeah, right? Like, like to just say, that's it. I am not running 60 miles an hour down the road any longer. And do I think you need to do it that way? I don't think you do. It's nice when you do, but you don't need to. You just need to commit. You teach interior designers, Rebecca, through your Power of Process course. What do you teach them, that they pull an hour a week out of their business, 2 hours a week out of their business? How do you counsel through your podcast and through your program? How do you counsel designers while they're up and running to pull it back and address this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's interesting that you asked that, because, how one person does it isn't the same as how another person will do it. And so, like, with my course, it's delivered live because I was a camp counselor and I like to do things live with people. I mean, there's recorded lessons, but I like to sort of what they call drip, release a module a week so that I can be there and present and ask questions and not overwhelm everyone. So in that case, I say, set aside, I like to say minimum 4 hours. I know it sounds like a lot, but you want half a day to focus on your business. And even if people are going to take my course or do another course, something like yours, I would recommend you pick 1 day a week, whether it's a couple hours or half a day, ideally. I think someone in one book I read somewhere said minimum 4 hours to get anything done is a good chunk of time for time blocking. But if you get in the habit, maybe it's Friday mornings. One of the girls in our community said she was going to do Money Mondays, where every Monday morning she's going to look at her finances because that was something she struggled with. And I love that idea of getting into the habit. I think when you're setting up a process and you haven't done it and you really want to kind of get something established, that's a great way to go. But the reality is, once you get going with your business, that's not always going to be possible. And so what I always advise is, as you're going, and this is what we do now, is as you are going through a project with a client, with your team, and something comes up or you want to tweak it, edit it right then and there and make sure your template or your SOPs are up to date. Because I find that if I want to overhaul my onboarding, or if I want to overhaul, let's say, I don't know, how we run a presentation or how we prepare our clients for that, it's so much better for me when we're kind of in it and living it. It feels fresh. And so what I like to do is, once we've gotten through that step, say, okay, let's just set aside a couple hours next week to sit down and let's look at that. And how did that go? And how can we tweak it for the next time?
Love it.
For me, it's less daunting and overwhelming. I know some people who sign up for Power of Process and they don't join us live at all. And then they just sit down a few weeks later, or a couple months later, and they just binge the course, and they get great results out of it. And then they join our community. But I think it's different strokes for different folks. And I also think process isn't a one size fits all.
Right.
As much as we want to standardize our industry, and I know there's a lot of people hoping and helping designers to do that, I think residential design, and with personalities and styles, and there's so many different types of design services out there, that I don't think it is a one size fits all approach to process, but I do think you need to have a process. And so what I've done over the years is I've tweaked what I did. At first I had a certain number of steps. Now I have 7 steps, and who knows, maybe in 10 years it'll look different. But it's something that if you take the time initially, once a week, to focus on it, reevaluate, do a course, listen to your podcast or whatever it is, then as you kind of get working with that process, you can tweak it as you go.
Well, I love what you said there, because all of it, I'm on 100% high five, all the things. And the one thing is, there's not necessarily only one process. We're not necessarily, I agree with you. I don't think there is any desire to standardize the industry to the point that, 80,000 designers out of 80,000 designers have the same process, right? But I love the classification or the clarification actually of, but have a process. So to me, the analogy is, you have McDonald's, you have Burger King, and you have Wendy's. Essentially, they're all fast food hamburger joints. They are not exactly the same. They do not necessarily deliver the same products. They have different, approaches in individual, like you said, there's your style here, your approach there, your level of client here, blah, blah, blah. But, every Wendy's, Burger King, and McDonald's has a finite process.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just like, well, should we make hamburgers first, or should we take the lettuce out of the refrigerator, or should we put, the carbon, what is it called? I don't know what it's called. It's carbon. I don't know what the heck it's called.
Carbon? I don't know.
There's the carbonation, tanks into the soda. Yeah. I was going back to the days when my mom and dad ran restaurants like that, and we'd have to take the tanks and get them up. Don't mind me. But you know what I'm saying? It's like the way you do it, the way you teach it is going to be possibly different than the way Sarah Brennan teaches, the way Sandra Funk teaches it. But the idea is do what resonates with you, but do something, right? Or do your own, invent your own. But don't just to that one client said to you, it was chaotic, right?
Yes, it is. And there's little things you can do in your business too, right? That you can up level what you're doing to make your life a little bit easier while you're establishing process and I don't want it to sound like a scary thing, but it can be very, what's the word? You can make it as detailed or as simple as you want.
Daunting, right? Daunting.
Or as daunting.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's the word.
Yeah, I can't. And never mind, start tomorrow.
Well, and seriously, I think that's what a lot of us go through because we think, we'll deal with that tomorrow because, I still haven't finalized that substitution because that lamp is back ordered and I don't want to wait 6 more months. And so I'll prioritize that. And there's always something to react to. I find that when you have a process, you're able to be proactive more so than reactive, right?
100%. So what are some of the things that, so we just talked about taking maybe 4-hour chunks, committed to doing them every week. I love that. I totally agree with that. The time blocking and just, this is it. No, I'm not doing a design plan now. I'm not having consultations now. I'm not having discovery calls now. This is my time every week or every other week to document and work on a process. What are some of the other things that you find have worked for you or work when maybe lessons that you've taught on your podcast or through Power of Process?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, 100% time blocking. I'm a huge proponent of that. Finding chunks of time and then honoring that and not letting something else take that away. I mean, we're the first to give up our own time and to give up the commitments we make to ourselves. So time block and don't let a client or a vendor or any other task take that time away from you. The other thing that I would say, and I talk about this all the time, is charge for your consultations. I personally feel very strongly about charging for your consultations. I think it shows that you're professional. For us, it has helped us to pre-qualify our clients. For the longest time I charged, I started at $250, then at first I didn't charge for consultations and I thought that was a crazy notion. I heard another designer talk about it. Then I thought, okay, I'll try this, $250, and then I was to $500. And then a few years ago, I said to my husband, I think I'm going to raise my consultation fee. I'm getting so many inquiries and people are hiring me for consultations, but they're not turning into projects. And I'm like, maybe I'll go to $625. And he said to me, because he's more like you, LuAnn. He's like, no, do it this way. Come on, you need to make money. So I'm glad I have him in my house because you're not in my house. You're in my ears though. And he said, well, if you're going to go to $625, why don't you just go to $750?
Right. Somebody who's going to pay $625 will pay $750.
And I was like, ooh, I don't know. I'm like, he's like, worst case, no one hires you and you lower the price.
Right.
And so I did it. And
people paid it.
Shocked. People paid it. And then my conversion rate went up because more people who were willing to pay $750 were more committed and more prepared to actually take that next step into working with us.
I love that. Now, I know what I'm hearing people saying, even though it's just me and you, I'm hearing all the questions. So what do you deliver for the $750 so that somebody doesn't say, well, that wasn't worth it?
Yes. So this is a great question because we have a Facebook group, and inside people are always asking about this, and they have this challenge of, well, the person wants a refund. So I'm very clear up front. I think whatever you decide to deliver for a consultation is up to you, but you have to make sure it's super clear and the expectation is there with the client before they hire you, before they pay you, which I also believe you should get paid up front. Don't collect the money at the consultation.
Right.
I don't like collecting money from people. It makes me nervous. So I love collecting it up front. Then I don't have to talk about it and deal with it at the consult. But my delivery is very basic. They are hiring me as a professional. I do sometimes bring an associate because then they can take the notes while I do all the talking.
Right. Important.
But it is for up to 2 hours of my time in their house with this client, walking through the space, troubleshooting, providing solutions and creative ideas, answering questions. We can help them select paint colors. They have us at their disposal for those 2 hours. After that, I will type up a summary of everything that we discussed as far as the scope of work, and I send them a proposal. Okay. And that's it. There's no floor plans. There's no, here's where you can shop. It's just for our time. And I don't get pushback, but that's because I'm super, super clear from the very beginning.
Did you just say that you give them a floor plan in that follow-up? I missed that. No.
Right. There's literally no deliverable.
Right. And the thing is, so what's funny is because I almost think you could say, look, I'm here for 2 hours. Take your notes. Like, you don't even have to deliver the follow-up, in my opinion.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But what you do is you're either taking notes or your assistant is, and you do collate those and send them after the fact. We talked about maybe if you move this wall here, you would open up to your great room, or if you put the dishwasher over here, you would have a better, triangle for, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And your guest bedroom should have new drapes and new carpet or something like that.
Sort of, not really.
Oh.
So it's more of, here's what you want to hire us for full service design to do.
Oh, we're not
remodel
recapping.
Your kitchen.
We're not recapping what you told them. You're recapping what you understood the project to be going forward. Correct. If they were to hire you.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense. So if somebody wants to just take their own notes and then never hire you, they can take their own notes and execute on a couple of ideas that you've shared.
Absolutely.
Understood. Okay. But to your point, when you're charging real money, you attract more real clients.
100%.
Right.
100%. And it's especially nowadays. I mean, everybody fancies themselves, this is going to come across bad, but everyone thinks they can afford a designer because of all these TV shows. Right. And it seems like it's an affordable thing. And then what happens is they have these crazy expectations that they can get so much for so little. And then designers aren't making the money that they should be making for the expertise that they're providing. Right. And so I think that we highly undercharge as an industry for what we do, maybe more in Canada than in the US, but it is certainly something that I think clients will pay for consultations.
So how do you what if you're in that situation and you've had the meeting and you come back and you think, I don't want to work with these people? Like,
yes.
Yeah. And you're standing at the door and they're like, okay, so you're going to give us our proposal. And you're thinking, I don't want to. How do you handle that?
Well, there's a few ways you can handle this. This is a good question because this is something that has happened. and that's why I also do say when I have the discovery call, so I always have a phone call before I go to anyone's house, because sometimes that helps get everyone on the same page, or you recognize it's not the right fit or what have you. But in that discovery call, I make sure I tell the client that part of the consultation is for us to see if it's a good fit.
Okay.
And to make sure it's the right project for us, and make sure, because I say it's a relationship. It's a courtship essentially, right? Early on, trying to decide if we want to date, because when we do design projects, they last a year plus. Mm-hmm. So what I would probably do, now I'm not as confrontational as others, so I'm not saying to necessarily do exactly as I do. I may or may not say something on the spot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I need to process it in my mind and think, do I really want this project? Mm-hmm. There were some red flags. So if you are bolder, like LuAnn, I would say something on the spot and say, listen, this is a really, seems like a really great project. I don't think it's the right fit for our firm. You could say timing, you could say, typical budget, or you could just say, I think that what you're looking for could be better served through using another company. I'd be happy to give you some referrals. I would probably do it after the fact because I don't love confrontation. I'm working on that.
Well, you know what? I have to tell you, I don't believe it needs to be done on site. I really don't, because I think, to your point, there is value in stepping away and processing it and really thinking. I understand that. I know that I would have my inside voice telling me, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But I don't believe, unless it was a completely egregious situation, like it actually involved disrespect and, sort of really egregious. I think you're wrong. I don't think I would either say on the spot necessarily. And I think I would say, I'm not feeling this. It's not feeling right to me. These are the reasons, but I would, in the moment, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. This is when we go back, and as a team, we evaluate if this project is a good project for us. See, I might like plant the seed again. You see?
Yeah.
Whereas if I was like, this is the best thing ever, I'd be like, okay, we're going to go back. We're going to get your proposal together, blah, blah, blah. We'll be in touch tomorrow. Bye. But if I was like, I don't really think I want to do this project, I think I would not chop the guillotine, but I would lower it. And I'd say, thank you so much. I love the visit. It was so lovely meeting you, and I love your home and everything. This is when myself and my team will go and evaluate all of the variables of your project and to see if it does fit with where our firm is at this moment. And so I'll be in touch in the next day or two to let you know our decision. And if there's a decision, in favor, we're going to follow it up with a design proposal. So I'll call you on Friday.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely.
Because now I've set the groundwork that you're just not in. You know what I'm saying? But I can also come back from that and maybe get the feedback of somebody on my team, or just continue to listen to my own voice and be like, not for nothing, but if this condition were met, then I could do this project. And then maybe I have that conversation. Or if I really do feel like it's not, now it's been a two-step sayonara. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly it. There could be a condition that, well, if they paid enough money, it would make it worthwhile. Right.
Yeah.
And so
you might have liked them. You might
quote.
have liked the project, but they were talking about a $20,000 budget. It needs to be $80,000. Yeah. Right? If they were to adjust their frame on that, and maybe in the moment they couldn't come up from it. But see, if that's the case, then on that Friday, I could call up and say, I am going to be completely frank with you. I would love to do this project. This is right in our wheelhouse. I think that we had good chemistry. I hope you agree. My only stipulation on being able to take this project is that your budget is unreasonable. Your investment range needs to be 80 to 100K. And if that feels comfortable for you, then I'm your girl. And if it doesn't, I totally get it and respect it, but we will pass on the project.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it, because I think that's what happens a lot of the time, because most people don't know what things cost. Right. They don't.
Right. And here's the thing. We always have to leave room for the person who says 20 but has 80.
And that happens more than you would realize.
All day long. And the thing is, there's also the dynamic if there's a couple involved. They could have said 20 together, but then after this amazing walkthrough and this amazing consultation, one might look at the other and go, come on, she's making sense. It's going to cost $80K. We're going to do this anyway. Are we going to spend $100 and make $20,000 worth of mistakes? Or are we going to have her do it? Like, you have no idea what's happening in the background. One of them could be level-headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully one of them's level-headed.
Yeah. So, So I like I said, egregious, disrespectful. You have got to be kidding me behavior. No, I'm out. Yeah. I don't. You know what I mean? But beyond that, I would definitely really get clear on why do I think it's not a good project, and if there's anything, if this were in place, would I take the project? Okay, can I put that in place?
Absolutely. And you have to trust your gut.
Yes.
And so when you don't trust your gut, that's when things tend to go sideways. I had that happen at a consultation, and my gut was saying, this is not the right personality fit for me. She has the money. It's a nice size project, but she wrote me a check on the spot, LuAnn. She was like, here. And so, of course, then my mind took over and said, well, she must be the right client because she's willing to pay right up front. But it wasn't ideal. And I ended up that's right when I brought on that project manager. Thank goodness, because she managed that client. I did not step foot in that renovation until the reveal day.
Oh, wow.
Because I couldn't.
Nice. Yeah.
Her personality was just too challenging. It was the only way that I could do it to get through to the end of the project. So trusting your gut is very key. And I agree. When you walk away, you think about it, then you can make the right decision.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we have, block time and honor the time. Charge for your consults. Are there any other quick little tips here? Or, I mean, you've given us so much. I mean, if that's it, that's good.
Honestly, a big one would be, and we don't have to dive too deep into it, but I think it's important to say, is I firmly believe that you should not share your discounts.
Thank you.
Or your commissions.
Thank you.
Because here's the deal. You are leaving so much money on the table. As somebody who never shared her discounts, because the model that I had from the designer I worked for was we mark everything up and then some. Then I heard from a coach that you should share your discounts, and that'll help to offset the design fee. And I felt great about charging more for my design fee. And then I split it 50-50. And then I had an operations manager, the same lady, who said, "What are you doing? It's really hard to make money in this business. You can't give away half of your commission. You are leaving so much money on the table. It's hard to be profitable." And I really had to think about it. And I just decided, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. Because let's be honest, we're in business. And LuAnn, you say this. And before we even went live today, you said, you never have to apologize for making a profit in your business.
Right.
And that's exactly true. And so now when clients, it's very rare, but if someone asks me about discounts and if I share them, I honestly say to them, actually, I used to share my discounts, but I found that it really wasn't a profitable business model. Right. And that shuts them up.
Right.
Because they don't want you to lose money working with them.
It's just, you're right. We're not going to go 25 minutes into this because this is when I start levitating.
It's a whole other topic for another day.
Exactly. But it's true. I mean, look, we've said it 1,000 times at this point. What other business do you walk in and say to them, am I going to get your discount? Am I going to get the wholesale price that you get? There's no other business on the planet that you do this to. It's patently absurd. And the thing is, what I'm going to tell you is, I think the aha moment that a lot of designers have to face in the mirror is that comes from you. It comes from the industry. Because if it was just a consumer behavior, you as a consumer would walk into Capitol Grill and say, so I really wanted this filet mignon and this, spinach and this, apple cobbler and a martini. And I want to know, are you going to give me your wholesale discount on it?
Can you imagine?
I mean, this is the thing. It's not a culture question. It is not a consumer culture question. It is a consumer culture question in the design industry because designers have taught consumers that they could do it. And they started by teaching it to them because they were afraid to charge their worth. Period.
Yes. Preach. Preach. Oh my God. I could talk about this all day long too.
I know. And the thing is, I've had conversations with designers who are super intelligent, that are seasoned, that, in their mind, and to some point objectively, I will say, make a case for it. Right? I'm not saying I've never had an intelligent conversation with a designer who hasn't made a case for it, that I've thought to myself, I could buy that. But I cannot leave the conversation without saying, but why do you need to do that? If you're so firm in your space to charge, 35% up or, always, then just charge the full markup. You don't go into Nordstrom and say, this Veronica beer jacket, you probably bought it for $120 and you're charging me $450. What are you going to give me on this? You just don't do it. So this is the thing. When designers complain that their clients do this, designers like you that don't engage in this, your clients don't do it. right?
No.
Like
Yeah,
I've
no.
heard thousands of designers tell me, my clients don't do it. It is how you set up all of your conversations, from what your website says, from what your Instagram shows, from what you do in your discovery call, from what you do and say in your consult. You either teach your client that there is an open door for it, or you firmly show your client the door to the discount is closed. Do not enter.
It's all about setting expectations
100%.
early and often, and just repeating yourself, but just making your business stand out. And you don't need the discount. Like sharing discounts is not even on the table. It's not a question, because you provide so much value and you paint that picture to your client right from the discovery call.
Yeah.
I think the discovery call is the most important step in our process, to be honest, because that is where you get to educate these potential clients. You get to learn about them and listen to them. You get to really lay that groundwork for what that working relationship is going to be.
100%. 100%. Well, you are incredible, Rebecca. Thank you. I love, the vulnerability and exposing the entire journey, right? Because I know for a fact that is the similar journey for almost every single business owner. I've never met a business owner that went, yeah, I opened up and I had it all locked down. Like, none of us do. It's like run in a circle, trying to get out of the circle, redraw the circle, and finally go, oh, it's supposed to be a square. Great. Yay. I'm running in circles. I need to draw squares. So I love it, though. I love that you shared it. And, we will put in the show notes your podcast and your Power of Process course and all the things. And just thank you so much for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us today, Rebecca.
It's truly been a pleasure, LuAnn. Thank you so much for having me.
When Rebecca first started working in the design business, she described that first job she had as chaotic and stressful, right? And then how crazy that all the years later, that one client said to her the same comment. It was chaotic. Right? So she knew there had to be a better way. And so she started listening to podcasts like this one and doing all the things. Because you know what? We've all been there, right? All of us. In the 800 plus interviews, I have never once, on or off air, had someone tell me that it's always been fine, that I've always gotten it from the beginning, that I started my business and I knew immediately how important systems were, and I started immediately with all the systems, right? So even like us at WindowWorks, we started as a franchise, so we were handed the systems, okay? And the Vincenz, yes, he's a systems, crazy man. But even us, none of us escapes it. Okay, that's the thing. And so the great part is that each of these people, Rebecca included, are now coming here and talking to each of us about their learning lessons, right? By listening to how each of us have done it before you, how designers like Rebecca have done it, learned from it, and now go on to teach it, you get to skip the head of the line. You'll still make mistakes. Believe me, no one gets out alive as an entrepreneur, right? But you can make far less mistakes by taking the advice and working with leaders in the industry like Rebecca, right? We all know it's hard to stop the bus to review your process, but guess what? You got to do it. Just do it, right? It's like my friend and co-author Desi Cresswell says to us every time she's on the show, your future self will be happy, and your future self will thank you for it when you do the hard things, right? So I encourage you to do the hard things, to take the lessons from Rebecca, okay? And if you want to hear more about Rebecca's success with process, then you're going to want to learn more about her Power of Process course. In this course, Rebecca takes a one-size-doesn't-fit-all approach to the process of service. And so she is someone who has walked the walk, right? Has learned the lessons, and I think probably will give you some terrific insights inside this course. If you're feeling a little scattered in your business and you need a solid process to help you scale up, check out the link in the show notes. Her cart opens September 15th, but it's only open for 2 weeks. All right? And don't forget to subscribe to Rebecca's podcast, Resilient by Design, where she shares the struggles and success stories of fellow entrepreneurs. All right? Thank you tons, Rebecca, for sharing your experience with us and for showing us how you've built a profitable business with process. I really love knowing and seeing how each of us come through our own little path to getting to where we're finding that sweet spot. right? The topic just never gets old for me. And I hope for you as well out there, because, I always say sometimes somebody says the exact same thing, but you just hear it when you're ready to hear it. So we'll keep having shows about how important this is. All right. Thank you tons for joining me today. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.